Have you ever stopped to imagine what you would do if you could ask for anything in the world? Money, power, maybe even immortality? Well, I am Solomon, son of David, heir to the throne of Israel, and I was given that very chance. But before I reveal what I chose, let me share how I got here. From an early age, I heard grand stories about my father David, the man after God's own heart, his courage against Goliath, his escape from Saul, and of course his anointing as king. I knew that destiny had something great in store for me, but I confess, I never imagined how much. After David's death, the kingdom was in a whirlwind of intrigue and distrust. My brother Adonijah attempted to seize the throne that had been promised to me. The tension was palpable. Every glance, every word could have sparked a civil war. But amidst the chaos, there was one decision that changed everything. And it was this choice that would define me forever. Have you ever been in a position where your decisions would impact the fate of an entire nation? That was precisely the scenario I found myself in when I knelt before God on a dark and silent night, and He made me an offer that few have received. Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you. Now I ask you, what would you have asked for? Money? Glory? Revenge against your enemies? I could have chosen any of these, and the whole world would have understood. But I knew, deep in my heart, that the path I chose that night would not only shape my reign, but would also echo through generations. And you, what would you have done in my place? I urge you to stay with me, because what I chose that night will surprise you as much as it surprised me. Have you ever found yourself in the midst of a plot where everyone around you seemed to be playing a game of power, and the only thing you could trust was your own instinct? Well, I lived that. My name is Solomon, and my journey to the throne of Israel was paved with intrigue, betrayal, and decisions that changed the course of history. Imagine, if you can, a kingdom in its final days of glory under the command of an aging and weakened king. My father, David, the giant among kings, was in his last moments, and the throne, still warm with his power, was already being coveted. My brother Adonijah, older and full of ambition, decided he wouldn't wait for our father's death to claim what he believed was rightfully his. And who could blame him? In those times, the law of the strongest often prevailed. Adonijah gathered allies, made sacrifices, and declared himself king. The whispers in the palace halls turned into shouts of support for a new leader. But while the coronation feast was happening, I was in the dark, grappling with uncertainty and doubt. As the youngest, it wasn't expected that I would take the lead. But something within me knew that this was not the right path. It wasn't the destiny that God had reserved for Israel. Have you ever felt like a pawn in a much larger game where every move could be your last? My mother, Bathsheba, and the prophet Nathan, our silent allies, knew that the throne could not fall into the wrong hands. Together they guided me, and I did what few would dare to do. I confronted my destiny. David, already frail and nearing the end of his days, made his final great decision. In a moment of clarity, he summoned me to his presence, and with words that would echo through eternity, he anointed me as King of Israel. But what goes through your mind when you finally receive what you've long desired? When, in an instant, the burden of leading an entire people falls upon your shoulders? And more importantly, how do you deal with those who tried to steal what was rightfully yours? Have you ever wondered what it takes to lead an entire nation? When I first sat on the throne of Israel, the weight of responsibility felt like an iron crown on my head. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Israel was a vast land, rich in history and challenges, and I, Solomon, had to govern it with justice and wisdom. The early days of my reign were marked by difficult decisions. Inheriting David's throne didn't just mean maintaining peace. It also meant expanding and strengthening the kingdom. I saw the need to unite a people who, though blessed by God, were often divided by internal disputes and external threats. The first thing I did was reorganize the kingdom. I divided Israel into 12 administrative districts, ensuring that each region had a leader capable of managing and collecting tributes. You might think this was merely a bureaucratic move, But let me ask you, how would you maintain the unity of such a diverse kingdom? Each district answered directly to me, allowing me to create a strong and efficient central government. Furthermore, I realized that Israel's strength should not only be spiritual, but also military. I reviewed our defenses, increased the number of soldiers, and invested in military technology. But don't be mistaken, I didn't want to be known as a warrior king. My true goal was to protect what was ours, maintaining peace through deterrence. And then there was commerce. Under my rule, Israel flourished economically like never before. The caravans that traveled our roads, laden with gold, silver, spices, and fine fabrics, were a testament to our economic might. I established treaties with powerful nations like Egypt and Tyre, ensuring that the world's wealth flowed into our coffers. But what does it mean to rule for 40 years? 40 years of decisions, alliances, victories, and challenges. What does it mean to see your nation prosper, knowing that every act you take could shape the future of thousands? As the years passed, I felt the weight of time and the choices I had made. The glory of Israel grew, but so did the responsibility. With every decision, with every action, I knew the world was watching. And you, what would you have done in my place? My reign was just beginning to be tested, and the lessons I learned during those 40 years still resonate today. Have you ever wished you were so wise that you always knew the right thing to do? That happened to me, Solomon, when I became king of Israel. God gave me a very special gift, wisdom. This meant I could understand things deeply and make decisions that would help people. One day, two women came to me with a serious problem. They were fighting over a baby, each claiming the child as her own. It was a difficult situation, and everyone was waiting to see what I would do. How could I possibly know who the real mother was? Then, I had an idea that no one expected. I said that the baby should be divided in half, with each woman receiving a portion. But something extraordinary happened. The true mother cried out, "No, please let the other woman have the baby, just don't harm him." In that moment, I knew she was the real mother because only a true mother would love her child enough to give him up to protect him. My decision showed the people that sometimes, to do what is right, we need to think with our hearts, not just our heads. After that day, many came to me for guidance because they knew I would always try to be just and kind. And you, if you had to make an important decision, how would you use your heart and wisdom to do the right thing? Remember, being wise is more than just knowing things. It's also about caring for people and doing good whenever you can. Have you ever imagined living in a place where gold and silver were as common as stones on the street? In my kingdom Israel, that nearly happened. I am Solomon, and during my reign Israel became one of the richest and most prosperous places in the world. When I became king, I knew I needed to make Israel grow and thrive. So I started making agreements with other nations like Egypt and Tyre. These agreements were like great exchanges. We gave them what they needed, and they gave us wealth and resources that made our kingdom even stronger. Moreover, Israel was located in a special place where many trade routes crossed. Imagine a large intersection of roads where caravans laden with gold, spices, and fine fabrics passed by every day. Controlling these routes meant that our kingdom received immense wealth from different parts of the world. And I made sure that Israel became the center of these exchanges, where all that was good passed through and remained. The riches weren't just in the palace coffers. Throughout the kingdom, people began to live better lives. Cities grew, new buildings sprang up, and commerce flourished. In the markets, stalls were filled with goods from distant lands, and people had what they needed to live well. But what I learned was that true wealth isn't just about having a lot of gold or silver. True wealth lies in how we use these resources to do good and improve people's lives. I wanted Israel to be more than just a wealthy kingdom. I wanted it to be a place where everyone could live in peace and prosperity. Have you ever dreamed of building something so grand that it would be remembered for generations? When I became king of Israel, I had that dream. I wanted to create something special, something that would show just how strong and blessed our kingdom was. That's how I began building what would become my greatest achievement, the first temple in Jerusalem. This temple wasn't just a beautiful building, it was the house of God on earth, a sacred place where people came to pray and give thanks. I used the finest materials to construct it: cedar wood from Lebanon, gold, silver, and precious stones. Every detail was carefully thought out to be perfect, to show how much Israel valued God's presence among us. But the temple wasn't the only construction I undertook. I also built the House of the Forest of Lebanon, a grand palace made of wood, which served as a special place for gatherings and celebrations. And of course, I built my own house, where I lived with my family. Did you know I had many wives and concubines? Because of this, my house needed to be large enough to accommodate everyone. I knew that these structures needed to be enduring, strong, and beautiful, so that Israel would always take pride in its king and kingdom. Every stone, every piece of wood used in the construction had meaning. It wasn't just about creating something beautiful. It was about leaving a legacy that showed how much I loved and cared for our people and our faith. The temple in particular became the heart of Israel, where people felt the presence of God and knew that He was always with us. And you, if you could build something that would last forever, what would you build? How would you ensure that your creation would be remembered and cherished by those who came after you? Have you ever made decisions that seemed right at the time but later realized they weren't? Even though I was a wise and powerful king, I, Solomon, made mistakes that changed the destiny of Israel. These errors began to surface when I allowed power to go to my head and stray from the right path. One of the first mistakes I made was forcing many people to work hard, without rest, to build my great projects. At first it seemed like a good idea. I wanted Israel to be grand, but I forgot that the heart of a leader must always be with his people. The people began to feel tired and discontented, and this dissatisfaction started to grow. Another mistake was the number of wives and concubines I had, many of them from foreign lands. They brought with them their own beliefs and gods. Instead of keeping my heart faithful to the God of Israel, I began to allow foreign idols to be worshipped in my kingdom. This not only weakened the people's faith, but also distanced me from God. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where the choices you made started leading you down a path you didn't want to follow? That's what happened to me. Gradually, I realized that the heart of the kingdom was beginning to divide, and the people who once loved and respected me were now starting to question my decisions. And this was the price I paid for straying from the right path. My lack of care and the wrong decisions I made began to lay the groundwork for something I feared: the division of Israel. After my death, the kingdom I had worked so hard to build and protect began to fall apart, splitting into two parts. Now, looking back, I understand that power is a burden that must be carried with responsibility and humility. Even the greatest leaders can fail if they forget what truly matters. And you, what would you do if you realized you were making decisions that could harm others and yourself? How would you correct your course before it was too late? Have you ever wondered what you will leave behind when you are no longer here? I, Solomon, thought a lot about this while ruling Israel. During my reign, I gained great wisdom, unmatched riches, and a fame that spread across all lands. But my legacy is a mixture of greatness and warnings. My wisdom is undoubtedly what marked my reign the most. The stories of my just judgments, like that of the two mothers disputing the baby, are still told today. My pursuit of knowledge resulted in proverbs and teachings that are still read and respected worldwide. I wanted the people of Israel to be guided by justice and truth, and I did my best to share the wisdom God gave me. The wealth I accumulated was also part of my legacy. Israel prospered under my rule, and the people lived in an era of peace and abundance. The first temple of Jerusalem, which I built, became a symbol of our faith and the grandeur of our kingdom. Even today it is remembered as one of the wonders of the ancient world. But despite all the wisdom and wealth, I also left a legacy of mistakes and warnings. My inclination toward luxury and excess, along with the foreign influences I allowed into my kingdom, led to the introduction of practices that turned the people away from God. This weakened Israel, and after my death, the kingdom was divided, resulting in conflicts that lasted for generations. My legacy is a reminder that even the greatest kings, with all their wisdom and wealth, can fail if they stray from the principles that guided them to power. The story of my life is told so that others may learn from my successes, and perhaps more importantly, from my failures. And you, when you think about what you will leave for future generations, what do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to be seen by those who come after you? Have you ever heard stories about me that seem magical or even unbelievable? Even after all these years, my name, Solomon, continues to be surrounded by legends and mysteries that go beyond what actually happened. People have always been fascinated by what they cannot explain, and in my case, many tales have emerged associating me with mysterious practices and supernatural powers. Some of these stories speak of magical rings that I supposedly used to control demons or spirits. Others claim that I possessed secret knowledge that allowed me to talk to animals or even understand the stars and the universe. Many of these legends have grown over time, fueled by my reputation as a wise and powerful man. It is true that I was blessed with extraordinary wisdom, but many of the stories people tell about me are not based on the most reliable accounts in the Bible. They are like tales that become larger and more fantastic each time they are told. The Bible, which is the main source about my life, mentions that there were records about me that have been lost over time. Perhaps these ancient texts could better explain some of the stories that circulate today. But without such evidence, many of the legends about my life are just that, stories. Fascinating, of course, but not entirely true. These legends have turned me into something more than just a king. To many, I am an almost mythical figure, surrounded by mysteries that no one can truly unravel. And perhaps that is how I should be remembered, not just as a king who ruled Israel, but as someone whose life inspired stories that continue to captivate people to this day. And you, have you ever heard a story so incredible that it left you questioning what was real and what was fantasy? How do you decide what to believe and what to leave as just a good story? But this isn't the only inspiring story we have to tell. In the next video, we'll dive into the incredible journey of Joseph of Egypt, a man who rose from slavery to become a ruler of one of the greatest nations of the ancient world. How did he overcome so many adversities and still maintain his unwavering faith? Don't miss this emotional story of determination, forgiveness, and the fulfillment of the most improbable dreams. If you enjoyed learning about the story of Solomon and the secrets behind his reign, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what impressed you most about the life of this great king. And remember, wisdom is the greatest treasure we can seek.